morning to dated 11/21/21, 10:05 a.m. Thank you everyone who has joined us this morning with whatever coffee, tea, or beverage that will keep you alert and ready to gain clarity and understanding as it relates to our THU. So just a few housekeeping notes. Videos are available, Town Halls, Contract 101, Grievances E18 on our YouTube channel. I am going to be copying this link URL and putting it in the chat for everyone to have access to more information as it relates to what we're doing here. So the town halls are also going to be in my YouTube channel, so please check it out. We also have dropped the Canvas slides for supplemental reading for our THU. Those are available in 2 of our unofficial groups on Facebook. And just to inform, I'm going to memorialize this in our town halls. The spirit and intention of TAP is to create an unbiased education rollout to help inform, educate, and clarify the THU. And they are not allowed to tell people how to vote, but they are allowed to clarify, inform, and also direct our in-flight crew members to other resources. So we're going to get started with our negotiating team. We're going to start our article unpacking section. I'm going to give this to Brandon. This is going to be about our scheduling. Article scheduling is article number 7 in the key of page 20. If everyone wants to follow along, I'm going to hand it off to Brandon. Thank you, Brandon.
Thanks, Taisha. Appreciate you hosting the call, and thanks everybody for joining. I'm Brendan Moriarty. I'm the LAX-based NT member on the call today. And yeah, scheduling article obviously is very important article to all of us. And the first thing, obviously, I'd like to start out with in this article review is one of our most important quote unquote wins in the tentative agreement, and one that will be very important to us once we ratify the contract. And that is our reduction in the scheduled duty day length. And so currently our duty days can be scheduled up to 14 hours, which is the FAA maximum. We were able to successfully reduce that duty day length scheduled from 14 to 13 hours. Based on the feedback that we received from all of the surveys that we did, both for the first tentative agreement and this one, told us, and we knew this, but reinforced to us how important it was to all of our IFCs to have a reduced duty day, and we fought hard to do that. We also knew, though, that there are lots of in-flight crew members who enjoy the productivity of our lengthier turns, our transcon turns and some of our other lengthy turns. And so what we did was, in order to prevent losing those, we have a carve out that allows the company to build pairings to 14 hours that only have up to 2 legs and greater than 9 hours of block credit for that duty period. So we were able to protect those turns as well as reduce the scheduled duty day for the vast majority of all of the pairings. And we feel very strongly that that is one of the most important gains that we've achieved in this agreement. Going forward, that reduction to the scheduled duty day also comes into play when we are discussing extended duty days. We all know how difficult some of those extended duty days can be, especially with the uncertainty of the operation at times, more frequently than we would like. Those extensions happen, and they are difficult for all in-flight crew members. And so by reducing the scheduled duty day, that also impacts the number of pairings that are subject to the lengthier duty extensions. And so this reduction in the scheduled duty day influences the chances that an IFC will be extended to those lengthy duty days that we all really dislike. Going on to the next thing, I'm just looking at my notes so I make sure I'm not missing anything. Layover rest. In this article, in the scheduling article, Article 7, your layover rest is codified. Because it's in the contract, it cannot be reduced. Crew services can't tell you, oh yeah, actually, we're gonna reduce you to 9.5 hours. Those days are over. 10 hours is the minimum layover rest. They will be scheduled for 11 hours. So those layovers are protected. The layover rest is protected. In-base rest protections. There have been a lot of questions about this, so we'll take a little bit more time to discuss the in-base layover rest protections. And also, since these are codified in the agreement, they can't be adjusted or finagled or misinterpreted by crew services. These numbers that you see are codified in a legally binding contract, so they will be enforceable and can't be changed or ignored by company. So when it comes to in-base layover rest, you'll see that it states that IFCs will not be scheduled for less than 12 hours of in-base rest. So every in-flight crew member is protected. She or he will get a minimum of 12 hours of in-base rest. This company cannot schedule you with less than 12 hours. However, we also know that some in-flight crew members enjoy stacking their trips so that they can maybe schedule more days off in a row at the end or the beginning of the month. So what we did was, and this is also a significant win for TA2, is that we were able to codify language that allows in-flight crew members, as part of their PBS monthly bid, to waive that rule, the 12-hour in-base rest rule, down to 11. So you can be, if you choose to waive that rule in PBS, you can be awarded trips that only have a minimum of 11 hours of in-base rest. That helps get those trips stacked. Furthermore, when it comes to in-base rest, if you've been released in base after the end of your trip, the day before your next trip, you're able to go into FLICA and self-adjust to pick up a pairing or swap out of a pairing for the next day with less than 11 hours. So you can go down to the minimum base rest of 10 hours by self-adjusting below that 11. That's only after you've been released in base the day before operations for the next day. So I just wanted to clarify that. That's been a hot topic and an important one to address. Also, when it comes to the scheduling article, one thing you'll see that's, we believe, really important and we're excited about is the establishment of our legally recognized scheduling committee. So we'll have a team of in-flight crew members who will be able to work with the company on a monthly basis, which is codified in the agreement. So the company is required to meet with us on a monthly basis to discuss the building of pairings and the pairing set and all of the issues when it comes to scheduling that affect us as in-flight crew members. But one of the things that's maybe overlooked that's really, really great for us is that the company is required to give our scheduling committee no less than, which means a minimum of 48 hours to review the pairing set, all of the pairings as the company has constructed them, to ensure that they align with and adhere to the rules of the contract. But also, if our scheduling committee determines that there are going to be potential issues with certain pairings, or if they have recommendations that it will improve our quality of life or productivity or other issues that come up with their review of the pairing set, the company must accept recommended changes to the pairing set that our scheduling committee provides. And I repeat, must accept them unless they would negatively affect the operation or increase the cost per fleet. So only those two reasons can changes that our scheduling committee recommends, can the company deny those changes. That's a tremendous win for us, and one that I look forward to our scheduling committee when the time comes having that impact and being able to improve our pairing sets going forward. I know I'm running up on time, so I'll just quickly go through the last few items I wanted to touch on. You'll see in that scheduling article, there are red eye restrictions. We really worked hard as a negotiating team to protect folks who are working the red eyes and also those who don't typically work red eyes and are not scheduled to work red eyes, protecting them from being forced to do red eyes when they're not prepared to do so. We also codified max sit times. Those connect times you'll see in the scheduling article are max scheduled sit times. So those cannot be exceeded in the pairing set. And lastly, the last thing I'll point out is that we codified in the scheduling article that no pairing will be built with more than 4 legs per duty period. And that includes deadheads and limos. So no in-flight crew member can ever be scheduled to work 5 legs in a day, 6 legs in a day. That cannot happen under our contract once it's ratified. Taisha, I think I hit all the points I wanted to. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your labor, Brendan. Next up is we're going to be unpacking exchange of trips, article unpacking. That is going to be in your hymnals, article 11 in the key of page 50. I'm going to shoot that to Stacy.
Hi, everybody, and I'm going to turn over to page 50 myself. So I will start by running down the list of some of the really exciting wins we have here. So to start off, we have implemented a new 48-hour first come, first serve window to adjust your schedule. And that's going to be before the hybrid and move up lines are built. This does give more access to pairings to the IFCs because these lines are normally built before our first come, first serve window opens. So we get essentially a 48-hour free for all for any IFC to do any trade swaps, drops, pickups the way we currently do. And then at the end of that 48 hours, the hybrid lines and the move up lines and the open time window will all commence. And that, you know, again, that just makes more trips available to us. We have new language for the premium first come, first serve, and those will be, we have something similar where the company will issue a notice saying that if you pick up on certain days or certain trips, you'll get, you know, additional pay for those. So that's now going to be a window. We have the new global first come, first serve window. And that's something that we worked really hard on to create a nice balance. We know IFCs want to be able to pick up out of base, but we also know that in base IFCs don't want to feel like all their open time is being eaten up by other bases. So a pairing will have to remain in base open time for a minimum of 2 hours before it can be placed into global open time. And at that such time, it can be picked up by an IFC who is out of base. Additionally, there is a provision that it is a IROP level 2 or higher. Once it has spent that 2 hours in the in-base open time, then it will have to be put into global. Crew services can't withhold it. And that is, again, to allow as many IFCs access to trips as possible. And as we know, once crew services has, you know, used up all of their reserves, that's when they start modifying people on their trips and junior manning. So anytime we can have people picking up trips, it's an improvement. We have a few things that mandate that the company can't withhold pairings. Let's see, one of them is that the pairing must be in open time, another for 2 hours. Another one is that a FLICA request has to be processed before it can be assigned to a reserve. We have the reserve balancing. That's something that if you've been here a while, you might be familiar with. If you're newer, you might not. Reserve balancing is in the definitions, and that's the good day, bad day. And that just means that you have more flexibility in the open time window. So if you want to trade trip and your, the grid is red and the trip you want to trade is also in the red, you're going to be able to do that. We have the protection of the rigs in JetBlue trades and the front end tail end split. That is the time away from base rig. We were getting a lot of reports, particularly out of the Florida bases, that what was happening is, say I had a leg down to from JFK to Orlando, and I had a 30-hour layover and a leg back, and I wanted to stay in Florida and go to Disney with my niece. So if I gave away the tail end of that pairing, I would only be pay protected for the or paid for the time away from base from when I reported in JFK to when I arrived in Orlando, and the entire rig for the layover went away. We protected that. That is now safe. So you will get the entire time from when you report to when the other IFC picks up the pairing. Let's see what else we have. We have the original IFC, and this is new also. The original IFC, if they do a front end tail end split, the original IFC is not held accountable or responsible to work the pairing if the IFC who picked up is not available or not there. And we can swap and drop pairings that fall between the bid periods. The company will now establish basically a small reserve minimum for the first 4 days of the next month, so that you will be able to process those kinds of trades. And so, right off the bat, we have a lot of really fantastic wins in the Exchange of Trips article, and we encourage you to read it thoroughly. Look for those slides. If you are on Facebook, if you're not, find a friend who is, and unpack all of those, because it's a really fantastic article, just chock full of stuff. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Stacy. Stacy is our NT representative for JFK. We're going to move on to our last article, unpacking. That's going to be probationary period. That is Article 6, page 19 in your TA2, and I'm going to hand that to Boston NT Rep Sonia.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to talk a little bit about probationary period. So this article is specifically for new hires and our baby blues that have just completed initial training. So this is the 6-month period starting with your date of hire. So this is the date for all IFCs, regardless of whether or not you transferred from another department. It's the date that you started as an in-flight crew member. So during your first 6 months, you're covered under all of the protections of this contract, except for areas in which you may run into a discipline or discharge scenario. So if you're on the line working in your first 6 months and there's something wrong with your pay, or you have an egregious work violation, you can file a grievance with your shop steward or grievance associate and file like that. But if you do find yourself in a position of discipline or discharge, the protections of the contract are not there for you, but you can, in that instance, still have someone represent you. So the union will be there on your side. You'll have someone to talk to. They'll be able to sit in the meeting with you and the company, represent you, and help you in that situation. This actually enhances what we currently have, which is our peer observer program, where you only can meet with someone and confer with them before, and they can sit in with you, but they can't represent you. They can't speak on your behalf. They can't help you in that situation. The terms of the probationary period will allow for the company to extend you an additional 6 months if you find yourself on a continued progressive guidance level or higher. And just want to state just a little talking point here. The company did actually want to extend that to 9 months. We fought really hard with them about that, because we just found that, or discussed that, if you were already at a point where maybe you were having a hard time adjusting to your new career here, why add the extra burden of another 3 months negatively against you? Just want to make sure I have touched all my notes here. Yeah, I think, and even though this is a very short article, it's very impactful for your beginning of your career here. I think I touched on the three topics there, Taisha.
All right, thank you, Stacy, Boston NT rep. That concludes probationary period article number 6. We're going to move on to our next section of our town hall. These are going to be items to clarify or correct. We're going to start off with Stacy. Stacy is going to issue a clarification as it relates to reserves in the portion listed in B3E. So I'm going to hand this off to Stacy.
Hi, and hang on one second because I was on the page for my other topic. So let me get to where I am highlighted here. Okay, so the question was, you know what? And Taisha, are you talking about the RSL or are we talking about the other reserve issue, B3E?
I'm
Got it.
reading now. Yes.
I got it, not the other
Yeah.
issue. Okay, so
Right.
So the misperception is about the meaning of B3E in the contract, and that is so that's going to be stating that your additional flying prior to release from pairing or ASB. It's saying that you can't be made to come back for the duration of your wrap. It's not saying that you're just on call all day. Even if you finish a pairing, go home. It's saying that when your wrap begins, you are still required to be contactable. So if you have a pairing later in the day, they have to or you have to be able to be contacted if they want to change it. Sorry. So basically, the company can assign you additional flying prior to your release from a pairing or airport standby. That's what we do today. It's covered in B6B. So if you guys want to take notes, B6B is where that's covered. And what it's saying in B3E is that when you have a wrap, you're assigned a pairing, you have to remain available in case you need to change the assignment. There is an exception to that, and that's if they assign a red eye. The expectation is that you are going to go to rest. You do not have to be contactable if you've been assigned a red eye. So again, this is the current policy. This is not a change. This is not a loss. You will never be released at the end of a pairing and told to come back. Once your pairing or airport standby ends, if an assignment was not added prior to it ending, you are released to your contractual 12 hours rest. So somebody had called in the other day and they had or written in and there was an example. And so I'm going to use the same times for that. The IFC has a wrap of 0400 to 1600. They have a 2-hour call out in their base. They get assigned an 0600 report. When that pairing ends at 1300, the IFC will check to see if any flying was added prior to 1300. If it was, the IFC must acknowledge within 30 minutes of their release time and operate it. If it was not, the IFC is released to their 12 hours rest and cannot be assigned anything further. That's B6B. Different scenario, same wrap, the IFC is assigned a pairing that reports at noon. That IFC is still required to remain contactable in case crew services changes the assignment. That's what B3E says. But again, the exception, if that IFC were assigned a red eye, that would not apply because no AM wrap can be assigned to a red eye. If this were a PM wrap and a red eye were assigned, once that assignment is made, the IFC is released from being contactable. They can rest and they will operate that pairing that evening. I know I talked fast because it was a lot to cover, but I hope I covered everything and you can replay it when we release this.
All right, thank you, Stacy. Our next clarification, it has to do with transit checks. You're going to find that information in Article 26, expenses, page 130, and I'm going to hand that back to Sonia.
Okay, so seems to be a little bit of confusion out there in regards to the world of parking. So we're just going to try to clear that up for you. So as Taisha mentioned, our expenses article has a section letter G that talks about parking. So we currently have a variety of ways that you can be reimbursed for travel expenses to work. So if you're located in JFK or Boston, you can receive a transit check. And this is a value that is the company negotiates with the metropolitan transit associations of those two cities to promote mass transit. So while there is a value on the transit checks, it's not a contractual value, as that is something that the company negotiates on a mass discount. So you can get a transit check. If you're in any of the 5 bases, you can receive parking at your base, and that is paid for by the company for you to park at base. If you choose not to have a transit check or receive parking in base, you've always been able to concur $40 a month for parking in your local airport. We received a lot of feedback that was very inconvenient. Sometimes people would misplace the receipts, or they would forget to concur and then turn around, and then they were no longer eligible to be reimbursed for that out of base parking. So what we were able to agree to and get for the crew members was that if you do not elect parking in base or a transit check in the 2 bases where that's available to you, you will get a $40 stipend added onto your paycheck. And that is for you to use however you like. If you have someone that drives you to work, consider that a reimbursement for gas or tolls or whatever it may be. So it's not, just trying to clear that up. You either can receive in-base parking, transit checks in the 2 bases until, maybe they become available somewhere else, or the $40 stipend that just gets added to your paycheck every month. Hope that clears things up.
Perfect. Thank you, Sonia. Our last clarification for this specific morning town hall is going to be about our dues. I'm going to hand that back to Stacy as well.
Hi. So the dues, it's really straightforward. We have a committed promise from John Samuelson, who is the president of the International, that our dues will be $35 per month. The dues will not begin until we have established our local, and that is something that takes months. So you're not going to be starting paying dues as soon as we ratify. Again, once we do pay them, they will be $35 per month for the life of this contract. And that will not change, and your dues will never be retroactive. And pretty simple.
All right, thank you, Stacy. So now we're gonna move to questions that were pulled from the website. One of the questions was already answered as it relates to base rest. That was during the unpacking that Stacy did during exchange of trips. So we're gonna go to D. This question is for D. Will there be a buyout package offered? If so, money calculations. And then they asked about our pay scale and separate sick bank and separate PTO bank. So I'm going to hand this off to Dee.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks once again for joining us. We appreciate you trying to find out the real information on our contract. The company is not planning on offering any opt-outs at this time. So that's like a mute issue. Let me see. So the pay scales, date of signing plus 12. If you look under compensation, you will find at the top of the pay scales, whether it be the straight pay scales or the premium base plus the premium, the dates that each step will become effective. Date of signing, your pay will remain the same, and then you will move over one category. The next pay raise for you would be 1/1/23, followed by 1/1/24, followed by 1/1/25, followed by 1/1/26. So whatever year you're at, you move down the pay scale, and each year as you get a raise, you move across the pay scale. We're going to try and get some flyers, more flyers printed, I think, that would show you possibly in different colors how you move down the pay scale. But if you do have any questions about that, you can also email us at b6, and we will b6.twu.org, and we will do a personal email back to you showing you how to read the pay scale. Separate sick bank, separate PTO bank. No, we don't have separate sick banks. The majority of flight attendants surveyed did not want a sick bank. We do have a separate VPTO bank. That is a protected vacation bank that they cannot take away from you, and it will not diminish whatever the value is in the year that you're in. For some, it'll be 35 1 week, and for others, it'll be a 70 2 weeks. You can always use your PTO bank to supplement however you want, whether you want to use it for your sick time, whether you want to use it for your FMLA. Well, if you want to use it to pay yourself and change your schedule, that'll always be available to you. Contract term, our contract is 5 years.
All right, and thank you, Dee. And as a housekeeping note, 5 years is industry standard. Again, 5 years is industry standard as it relates to duration of contracts for many of our airlines. I'm gonna actually hop back to Stacy. There was a question as it relates to based rest, where it states there was talks about contact as it relates to crew services and how and when they're contacted. So I'm going to hand this back off to Stacy.
Hi, everybody. So yeah, we had some confusion on that. First, we'll start with 8A states that that is your scheduled rest, and 8C is your 10 hours actual rest that is never reducible. So those are the two different things there. And then when you look at 9, and that is about when crew services can contact you during your rest period. I know this was confusing. Currently, today, crew services can contact you at any time during your rest. As long as they don't try to contact you twice using the same method, it's not even considered an interruption. So they can call you on your hotel phone, they can email you, they can give you a notification on the app, and they can call your cell phone, and that does not count as an interruption because it's all different methods of contact. And who is sleeping through that? So the restriction that we have is that IFCs are not required to be contactable during any rest period. Crew services will not attempt to contact an IFC during the first 9 hours of a scheduled rest period unless operationally necessary. So that doesn't mean that they can just do that anytime. That operationally necessary is a provable, grievable item. And unless it is operationally necessary, they cannot contact you in the first 9 hours. If they do so, if they have to, it has to meet these two parameters. It has to be within the first 30 minutes of the start of your rest. So basically, I mean, you're in the van at that point, within the first 30 minutes or no sooner than 7.5 hours after the start of your rest period. They cannot contact you in any of that intervening time. That will be an interruption of rest. Very different than what we have today and much better.
All right, thank you for that, Stacy.
Sure.
This next question is D. It's regarding part-time. My understanding is that JetBlue is going to eliminate part-time. It will now be month-to-month bid. Can JetBlue decide to not offer part-time on any given month? For reference, I'm in the top 1% of my base. Can full-time FAs drop to 35 hours if reduced bidding won't be available?
You're muted, D.
You're muted.
Sorry about that. JetBlue is not, and I emphasize not, N-O-T, eliminating part-time flight attendants. We are going to see Crew Flex sunset, yes, within the next 3 cycles. So that's 6 to 18 months. How it's going to work now, it's called the reduced credit line. Yes, you will have to bid it every single month, but yes, you can remain part-time by bidding the Crew Flex, the reduced credit line every single month to 35 hours. They cannot decide to not offer it every month, I'm trying to read the question while I'm answering you. 7% of the base must receive or can bid for a reduced credit line. So once again, 7% of the base. CrewFlex doesn't even offer 7% every 6 months, and CrewFlex doesn't allow you on it if you are possibly on PG, so you're locked out of it or you're locked into it. The reduced credit line is available to 7% of every single base every single month, and you will earn full PTO with it. So you'll also be able to supplement, possibly dropping down. And it says, can full-time flight attendants drop to 35 hours if reduced bidding won't be available? Well, reduced credit will be available every single month. And yes, a full-time flight attendant or in-flight crew member, as we call them, would be able to bid it approximately 2 to 3 times a year and would still be considered full-time, therefore eligible for your insurance benefits. And our part-time people who like to bid the reduced credit line every single month, since they're gaining full PTO, they might be able to supplement their hours. They will have a look back of 65 hours times 12 is 780 to be eligible for the insurance benefit.
All right, thank you, Dee. So that concludes questions that were pulled from the website for this particular session. We are still monitoring the polls from the website, and those questions that we don't get to as they come in are just going to be rolled over into the next town hall to be answered in next town hall. So that is a new protocol and procedure that we're doing for these town halls. And our next one, which is also going to be a new protocol, are the polls from previous town halls. So questions that are asked during current town halls are more than likely going to be rolled over into a next town hall to give the negotiating team an opportunity to research and find all of the influences of the question so that they can answer the question with as much information as possible, giving you as much understanding that you can have. So we're going to start with our first question from a previous town hall. This one is going back to D. In Article 13, it states the company has the ability to open a co-base within 40 miles of a current base. And for Fort Lauderdale, it specifically mentions PBI, that's West Palm Beach, but not Miami, which is also in 40 miles. Was Miami discussed?
Yes, Miami was discussed, and it was only discussed. The company said someday they might like to have a Miami base, and we left it at that. Someday they might like to have a Miami base. Palm Beach has always been considered a co-base of Fort Lauderdale for many, many, many years. We've never had any concerns from any Fort Lauderdale flight attendant regarding Palm Beach. We have many people who live in that area that like to fly out of Palm Beach. We provide limos to Palm Beach. We provide limos to Miami. And we have a lot of flight attendants that live south of Miami and in Miami. So they probably would also enjoy having that as a co-base. Fort Lauderdale's unique in that it's very well located between either of the airports. It's a little harder to get to Miami because the traffic is really bad. It's very easy to get to Palm Beach, and we don't have any complaints about that. So Palm Beach will exist, and no new base, like maybe they would decide to not limo us to Fort Myers, which is 2 hours away. Fort Myers will never become a co-base of Fort Lauderdale because it's way too far. And I think I might have said something incorrectly when I was speaking earlier about the reduced credit window. It's a bid, and it's available every single month.
All right, thank you, Dee. Our next question is going to go to Sonia. Sonia, Will anything change as far as how the company creates our pairings? Is there a guarantee that we will have a certain amount, 1, 2, 3, or 4-day pairings? And can the company do away with 1-day pairings? And that's from Melissa Espinosa.
Okay, sure. So in our Article 7, the scheduling article, there is language that specifically states that pairings shall consist of 1, 2, 3, and 4-day pairings. And these are specifically listed as non-transatlantic pairings. So these are our domestic pairings. That group must always consist of 1, 2, 3, 4-day pairings. And this is contractual. There was discussion, frankly, about a percentage. And the pilot's contract does have a percentage of trips. And they have found that the company will build the minimum amount of that percentage. And it's actually been a hindrance, especially in 1-day pairings, where, because those are quite frankly, more lucrative at times, they will build as little as possible, only matching that percentage. So we felt that by just keeping the fact that 1-days have to exist, they will always be available. Brendan did touch earlier about the in-flight scheduling committee that we've now codified into the contract, and they're going to be instrumental in this as well, because they will have the minimum 48-hour access to look at the pairing set before it's brought out to the flight attendants for bidding. So that group will be able to look at the pairing set to see how many, or what the variety of pairings are, and they will be able to provide feedback to the company if, say, we're seeing a great deal of 4-day trips and not as many of the shorter day trips, and try to find a balance there. And again, as long as it doesn't provide any sort of financial hindrance or change the operation, those suggestions will be able to be changed. So again, there's nothing prohibiting a 1-day trip specifically. There's nothing prohibiting any sort of lack of 1, 2, 3, or 4-day trips. So hope that answers your question.
Perfect. Thank you, Sonia. I'm going to have Travis open up commenting at this time. You can please ask questions that are especially relevant to the specific articles and topics that we have been talking about during this town hall. Any questions, again, a new protocol that we do not get to in this specific town hall will be rolled over into the next town hall, especially those questions that require additional research and follow up in order to maintain the integrity of the accuracy of our answers when we are being asked. So we thank y'all for your patience with this new protocol. And we are going to continue now with the rest of our questions from the polls from our previous town hall. This question is going to go to Stacy. To clarify items in Article 8 reschedule, if an IFC requests to be released from RSL, it is not protected, 8I7. If an ISC waits until they are auto-released, it is paid protected. That is the question. Is that correct?
Hi, yes, that's the question. So there are actually 3 ways to be released from or removed from RSL. So we want to make sure that we're very clear on all 3 of them. So when you look at page 22, and you have, excuse me, 1 second. Page 22, and you've got your releasing from RSL versus your requesting. So here we go. 8. Excuse me, 1 second. What I have, there it is. Sorry. So what I wrote down didn't line up with what I was trying to do. H10, that's the next day reserve assignment process after the pairings have been assigned and before the reserve periods are assigned. So that's where it says the RSL will be auto-released with pay protection for the following day, should the reserve numbers be above the required minimums. They don't need reserves. The numbers are good. They're going to start auto-releasing the RSLs, and that will be done in seniority order. And that, again, is grievable because we can look at where you are on the list and what the required reserves are for the day. And the next page, page 36, is where you go over to IFC's may request to drop RSL without pay protection, and that is I-7. So if you're dropping the RSL without pay protection via Flickr or JetCrew, when the reserve grid is above the required minimums, and that is without pay protection. But if you request to be released with pay protection, that is up to 72 hours. So if you are willing to hold out a little bit till 72 hours prior to the beginning of the OSB, you can request to be released with pay protection. So those are the three instances. And again, that is H10 on page 34. And then you have I-7 and I-9 on page 36.
All right, thank you, Stacy, for answering that question. This last question from previous town hall poll is from Allie. Do grievances hinder the company? I think many don't understand what grievance does. What would a successful grievance look like in terms of what we get if JetBlue violates something? That one's going to go to Ernesto. And also, as a housekeeping note, there is a grievance video that has been published to our B6. TWU is our group is TWU JetBlue IFCs. It's a YouTube channel that you can subscribe, and in there it does talk about grievances. So I'm going to hand this question to Ernesto to answer.
Is there audio?
Yeah.
Everybody, Ernesto here, Orlando-based negotiating team member. That's a good question. It's actually a hot question, and I'd be more than happy to shine a little bit of light on it. This was a big one for me. This was actually probably one of the main reasons for my voting to be unionized, is to actually have a grievance procedure for us, which is something we don't, Currently, we're dealing with the situation, we have been dealing for years, a situation where the company is judge, jury, and prosecution. We don't get fair due. And how many good human beings we've seen be let go, where their life changes in an instant, for infractions that at most could have been, progressive guidance, with a grievance procedure, that puts a major dent into that particular practice put into play by the company. Grievances do affect the company. And first and foremost, it's in their best interest to not be in the receiving end of continual grievances being filed, because it doesn't, it reflects poorly on their profile and the relationship with us, the work group, reasons for filing a grievance could be the result of a breach of terms of agreement, in our CBA, otherwise collective bargaining agreement, and examples of such could be discipline, work rule changes, work rule violations, employee discrimination or bullying, or even pay, and no one likes their pay being messed around with, With the grievance procedure, something we get is actual representation, which is far different than advocacy. We're gonna have one of our very own in-flight crew members in our grievance committee. So that right there is a game changer to the utmost. Company has to abide by the timeframes of the contract. The timeframe they have to notify in writing the crew member, being brought into questioning or investigation of a discipline or non-disciplinary reasons. Another thing to consider is if such is the case, that a crew member is not, and this crew member has to go out of service, they're not held out of service without pay, so you will be paid. If you're on leave or vacation or on PTO, you're not required to be available unless you choose to, unless you consent. So anyway, I hope that explains it. If I missed anything to my fellow team members, please feel free to chime in and add on.
All right, thank you. So talking about a Zoom user sent a question about RLLs. Will RLLs still exist or have move up lines replace them? To get the answer to this question as a housekeeping note, I'm going to have you all turn to page 54 where it talks about move up lines and as well as hybrid lines. And I believe I'm throwing this one. Who's taking this one? Brendan is taking this one.
Yeah, sure. I can handle that one.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so as Taisha mentioned, the language that you'll see in the contract about governing the construction of hybrid and move up lines will, as they currently do, but will replace the RLL bidding as we currently do. Although we will have on a monthly basis, as we've mentioned, the reduced credit lines that are sort of like an RLL that's on a reduced, a reduced line, so to speak. So the RLLs will no longer exist, but you will have the ability to agree to accept or reject a move up line or a hybrid line. And also those, as Stacy mentioned in her earlier discussion on the exchange of trips article, we were able to get the new 48-hour first come first serve window established that protects our seniority and allows the line holders that may want to adjust their schedules around days off or swap or drop or pick up in that 48-hour window. And then the company will be able to build those hybrid and move up lines from what's available after those adjustments have been made. So definitely a difference there, but also an improvement in the way move up and hybrid lines are built. So if anybody has anything else on this topic, I'd be happy to lend the floor.
All right, so that answers that question. I left a note in the chat as a note, and I'm going to read it out loud for memorializing on this town hall. As a note, hybrid lines consist of pairings and blocks of reserve days versus move up lines. Again, they shall consist, so this is a small word, bigger picture. Move up lines shall consist solely of pairings and shall comply with the provisions of Article 7 and Article 9. So again, that answer to your question, Zoom user, will RLL still exist or have move up lines replace them? That answer is found in page 54. So this concludes this town hall. I have the opportunity to give you guys back some time that was lost in the previous town hall as we went over by 6 minutes. So we thank you for your time here this morning, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And we'll see you, I think, tomorrow again for our next town hall. So I hope everyone has a great rest of your morning. Good morning.